Good morning and welcome back. For those of you who are wondering what we're doing this morning, we're continuing our series on vision and culture at New Hope. So Ryan set the stage 2 weeks ago. Last week we kind of had a panel discussion and it focused in on a few topics. We gathered some questions. We're going to try to address some of those here to start this off, and then we're going to continue talking about some of the other things that are on our values statement. And just to kind of frame what Ryan said in the beginning, the reason we care about these common set of values is because values determine our culture, right? We all have a culture here, and we're all responsible for building that culture, and what we value has a very direct impact on what sort of culture we build. So I thank you so much for sending in your questions. We're going to be gathering questions this morning as well, and it will be up there on the screen. So we weren't able to address any of them in the moment last week just because of time. But I want to sort of generalize a few of the questions that we got. And I'm not going to read them directly. I'm trying to mush them into common topics, right, rather than trying to handle all of them. And I'm going to give my partners in crime up here a little bit of advance notice that I'm going to turn to you guys, see if you have any comments. But I'm kind of framing them in three ways. We talked a lot about Matthew 18, and I'm going to read that here in a moment. Very well-known passage of Scripture. But most of our questions, because we were talking about healthy communication, had to do with breakdowns in relationship and communication, okay? So really three things came up. So there were questions about what do you do when you bring an offense to someone and they either don't understand, don't believe, or don't agree with you? How do you handle that? So that will be one that we'll try to address. The second one is, what do you do if you're trying to do a reconciliation process and the person just gets angry and it ends in gossip and slander out there in the world? These are easy questions, and we've got like 10 minutes to cover this, so Ryan, you knock it out of the park in 10 minutes. And the third one is, how do we just handle legitimate disagreements within the church? This would not be areas of sin. This might be things like, it could be something simple like, what color carpet do we buy? Or it could be something a little bit more impactful like, well, what sort of worship style do we have in the service? How do we just handle those legitimate disagreements or thoughts? Okay, so I can answer those, but I do want to give you guys a chance to jump in there. I will take a moment and read Matthew 18, just because I feel like this is such a widely quoted and applied, maybe appropriately and inappropriately, passage that it's probably just worth reading for a moment. And we did this last week, but let's just jump in here. So I'm reading from Matthew 18, verse 15. If a brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, so that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. All right. So I have a feeling many folks, this is one of those passages that gets thrown around the church as the one-size-fits-all passage for resolving issues. But there's just a few things that I just want to point out to you so that we understand how we can apply this in a proper manner. It says, if your brother sins against you. Understand, brother in this context, this is Jesus talking to Jews before the church existed, right? But he's talking to fellow Jews who share something in common, right? This does not, if we were to apply this to our situation, we're not just talking about any old person here. We could legitimately say this is talking about if your Christian brother sins against you, right? So there's an application boundary here. This doesn't just mean Joe, picking the most generic name possible, sorry for the Joes in the audience, right? This doesn't just mean Joe down the street, right? Joe may not be your brother, and so following Matthew 18, could you apply some principles there? Sure, but it's not speaking to that context.
The person in Aldi who takes your cart after you put the quarter in?
Yes, that is Joe. Again, sorry for Joe. So that's one thing I'll point out. The other thing is it does talk about telling the sin to the church, or it actually says assembly. It doesn't say church because there was no church at this time. Just a little. Tell it to the ecclesia. This is talking to someone who you share community with, right? Again, not Rando Joe on the internet, right? You don't share a community with Rando Joe on the internet, okay? So we have to understand that this is talking about, in our context, this is talking about someone within our community who is your brother, and you go to them and you tell them that their sin, and it reads as though you're telling them their sin to make them aware of it. So I also think you have to be cautious of applying this to a situation where someone is knowingly, willingly sinning against people. You would not have to go tell that to them, okay? So those are a few boundary lines, but I do want to bounce it to you guys. So I would just ask you, do you guys have any thoughts about what to do if we go to someone, we try to confront them with an issue, and it breaks down, they don't understand, they don't agree, they get angry? Like, how do we handle those situations?
Great question, Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just jump in quick with the first thing that comes to mind. Don't really have the answer, but I have found as I try to implement this that I'm like, by nature, I'm a people pleaser. That's one of my faults that I am trying to overcome, of just like pleasing other people. So I've had to really overcome taking responsibility for the other person's response, and that's not a healthy thing.
Yeah.
We can really only control how we approach a situation, how we communicate, how we, our tone, our body language, our message, trying to follow what the scripture says. In the end, we can't control the other person's response, for one, so they might get mad at us, they might get upset, but for me, just really been trying to learn to not take that on to myself, because it's not a healthy burden to bear, all of that. So that, and just I think being careful, and Ryan is really good at this, I found, just being careful how we communicate in that initiation of that conversation can alleviate some of those things. A soft answer turns away wrath. There's all kinds of scripture like that, so that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I think there's a peace that comes in knowing that I've done my part. I've said what I needed to say, and like Ben said, I can't control how the other person responds. But when you know, like, I've done my part, you can rest in that and still, this is going to sound weird, and still feel the ache of the situation not being mended. Like, I can be at peace, I did my part, and still ache, and it's still kind of broken. I feel like God lives in that space.
Yeah, and I think the attitude is important too, because if we're saying like, well, I did my part, it's on them now. Like, it's probably still something that needs work, but if you're really like, oh, I did my part, they're really upset, this is hard, like, that's probably a better place to be in.
Yeah. Last thing, this jumped out to me, I feel like for the first time when you were reading this passage. It says, if he listens to you, you have won your brother. And I just honed in on that, of like, oh, the goal is not to be right. It's to win my brother. That kind of changes things.
Yeah, I do also I want to jump in and say, the process laid out here does assume that first step may not go well, right?
Right.
There's an if-then there, and part of bringing other people in is for godly advice of other people where maybe you don't agree with somebody. So there is just carrying through, bringing some other trusted folks involved in the discussion. Let's jump down to, I'm going to do this out of order. Krista, you and I have spoken. What about this scenario where we're talking about just legitimate disagreements with the church over something that's not, maybe it's not a direct area of sin, but it's something that maybe we just don't see eye to eye on? How do we handle that, especially if they're maybe small?
So I might not be able to answer that question exactly, because so you might have to circle back.
Yep.
But my take is actually more for the person who's carrying the offense rather than the person that's going into the situation and realizing someone's offended with them. And some of this has just come about in my own processing in the past couple of years, is in the church, when there's transition. And we've had so many transitions in this past 2 years, and even New Hope, when Pastor Zach came in, there's so much transition. And I think sometimes the offense that comes up is we might think it's the wall color, we might think it's the carpet, but there's actually a grief in our hearts that those changes, those things that are changing in the physical are actually stirring something, and there's a hurt in our heart that's stirring up. And if we don't know what grief is, if we aren't able to label it and recognize it, what we do know is we know offense, and we know I'm frustrated and I'm upset about this, and so I'm going to get upset about them changing the carpet, not realizing that behind that, so carpet, maybe what's tied to that is not the color of the carpet, but there were memories, there were moments, there was encounter with the Lord that you had in this room, and now someone's coming in and they're changing it, and they're not acknowledging that past season, that history, that experience that you had in this place, and so your heart is just starting to feel just frustrated and like, why do you not care about this? Why do you not care about this? Why is this not important to you? And it doesn't mean that it's not important to the people that are making the changes. They're just not seeing, the what's happening behind, what's happening under the surface. And I'll just share an illustration in my life this past year. So we run a worship camp called Nuke, Northeast Worship Camp, and Ryan has been a part of it the last 2 years. I'm going to share a story about you, Ryan. It's okay. You're in not a negative one. And I didn't ask his permission for this. And so first year he was just kind of like getting a lay of the land. And then last year it was time for him to start, implementing changes. And, he and I are working together and he's running all the changes by me. And I'm like, yeah, it's a great change. It's a great, let's do that. I see the need for that. And we get to like 2 weeks before camp starts. And all of a sudden I'm like looking, okay, camp's gonna be here in 2 weeks. I'm looking at all the changes that we've made. And my heart is just like, I approve these changes, right? And my heart is just starting to kind of like weep a little and just get like, oh gosh, Nuke is going to look so different this year. We're changing locations. We've changed so much of our program. It's not going to be what it's been for the last 6 years. It's going to look different. And then I get this email from Ryan and he's starting to like look over our schedule and like he's wanting to make the smallest changes you could possibly think of. He just wants to change the name of some of like the sessions that we have during the day. And in that moment, I was just like, I can't do it. And I was like starting to get irritated with him. I was like, how could you do this 2 weeks before camp? And so my mind is just starting going, but like I had to stop and realize that like I'm grieving that there's a change happening right now to this thing that I helped grow, this thing that I love, that I'm so passionate about. And it's not the change that I'm upset about. Well, it is, but it's like, it's the, it's not really what Ryan is doing. Cause like even the change he was suggesting, like, yeah, we need to change that. It was the fact that so much of it was changing. It felt like the identity was shifting. It felt like we were saying goodbye to this thing that I loved and I cared about. And so I did go to Ryan. I was like, I know this is so small, but I just can't. Like, we just can't change. Just don't touch anything else. Like, we just got to go with what we have, and next year you can do more. I'll be ready for it. And so it's just, I think in those moments when we're the one that's carrying the offense, is to be self-aware and know what is the root behind what am I offended about really? Like, is it really the paint color? Is it really the carpet? Or is there something attached to this that I need to deal with? And like, bring that to the person. Because Ryan, like, once I told him, like, I just can't. He's like, all right, we don't have, well, he might have, he's like, maybe one thing. But it's like, he let it go. And he's like, okay, we'll just, camp is what it is for this year, and we'll, and so I think when we can identify what that root is and bring that rather than our offense about, people understand that. They can get behind your heart, and what's on your heart.
Okay, I want to wrap up 2 little bits there, and then I want to move on to our new topic, and I'm not going to give these the time they deserve. I'm just going to say that right now. For how do you handle slander and gossip if you're trying to do the Matthew 18 principle, I'm just going to say, I'm generalizing here, so please put that disclaimer here. Most often, this is not gossip and slander within a congregation. Most often in our day, it's out and about on the internet. I'm generalizing, so I understand that that's not always the case. But what I would just say to you is, Satan used gossip and slander to try to take down Jesus and try to take down Paul. Are you foolish enough to think he's not going to use it to take down you and me and our congregation? You should expect that. And the apostle said that Jesus had some hard sayings. Okay, get ready for a hard saying. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Skip a few verses, about 30 of them. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Like, that is a hard saying, man. It's like a dagger. I'm feeling that. But I would say, from what I have seen, most cases of gossip and slander out there in these contexts are usually in a context where the best thing to do is nothing at all. Pray for the person, bless them, and do nothing. Again, deserves way more time. I completely get it. Please don't rip that out of nobody's going to soundbite this. But if you soundbite it, don't rip that out. There's more to be said here. But I'm just giving you a general principle. It's almost always better to say nothing. And the one other context, this was just a personal comment given to me. And I honestly don't like talking about this, but it came from my wife, and she's wise. So I'm going to throw it in here. We have to be super cautious how we apply the Matthew 18 principles if we're talking about cases of serious abuse or neglect or serious sins within the church. If we're talking about sins of, the ones that make the headlines type of scenarios, usually those are situations of very willful, knowing sinning by someone in leadership. And we, as a leadership team, are committing, we will not force you into a position where you have to go talk to someone individually who has severely wronged you or abused you. That has no place in the church, and that is not an application of Matthew 18. Again, way more deserves to be said there. I'm just giving you the soundbite disclaimer that we are committed. Number one, we legitimately believe that it's possible for a church to not have to deal with those situations if their culture is positive and we handle things well. But we're not naive enough to think that it could never happen to me. It can happen to anybody, and we just commit that we would not treat those situations lightly. We will not try to sweep it under the rug. We will not try to hide it from the congregation in situations where it would be warranted to say it in a larger context. I'm not saying this because something has happened. I am not aware of anything that has happened that would fit that bill in the 10 years that I've been here. So I'm just saying that right now, but I want to put that disclaimer there for that person who maybe has suffered in the church in a situation like this. We would commit to trying to handle that in the most godly fashion, which means we are going to protect you. Okay? All right. I want to bounce it to Ben to jump. On that light note, can you jump to a new topic?
Yeah, thanks. So that was our attempt to kind of put a bow on the massive subject that we tackled last week of healthy communication. I feel like we could do a whole year-long series on healthy communication, and I might even be able to preach, which I don't even normally feel that, but not an offer, just a statement. But we do have to move on. We get to move on to some other things that are important to our church body and our leadership. So the next thing we're going to talk about a little bit is how we value family atmosphere and legacy within our body. And my beautiful wife, Krista, is going to share some of her thoughts on that. What is on your heart about these subjects? And can you just give a little bit of what the Lord's been speaking to you?
Sure. So they do overlap. I'm going to kind of separate them a little bit and discuss them that way, just because my mind was not like flowing this week to combine them just into one big lump. But I'll read first what the value is for family atmosphere, and it is, we cultivate an environment in which people of all generations and backgrounds are welcomed, valued, known, loved, celebrated, and supported. And the verse that the Lord was putting on my heart this week for this kind of came as a surprise, but not really when you think about it. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Grove, and I'm not going to read it this morning just for the sake of time, but it's the passage that talks about there being all these different parts to the body, and we can't say, like, if we're the hand, we can't say that we're not well, here, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body. Well, the foot can't say, because I'm not a hand, I don't belong to the body. And so we need all of these parts in order to make up the body of Christ. And I feel like a lot of times we talk about those verses in the context of like what we can do in the church, what we're physically capable of doing. But I feel like there's an element too that is generational, where, you know, we need the generations in the church to really have a healthy body. Like, I can't say to the older generation, I don't need you, I don't need what you have, because I do need what you have, you know? I need what the other generations have and their perspective. And the younger ones too, like, we need their perspective because there's such this fresh energy and fire to our kids and our next generation. And I know for Ben and I, when we first came to New Hope, that was one of the things that really hit home for us, was like, we see every age group represented here and we see them interacting. It's not like we're in these little cliques of like, you know, if you're in age 30 to 50, you hang out together. You know, it's everyone interacting. And so I can rub shoulders with the people around me and learn from them. And I think the age group, just to honor them in this moment, the age group that stuck out to us most significantly and that we kind of fell in love with and is what kept us here, was the older generation of seeing like Ruth and Denny and the Collinses and Kim and Robert and just so many. And I'm sorry if I forget, Marilyn, just so many who was like, their love for the Lord was just so strong and genuine and real, you know. And I feel like over the years, I've seen so many people who have just gotten burnt out with church or just burnt out in their relationship with the Lord, or there's so much bitterness that they've held on to. And just coming here to New Hope and seeing people who were on fire for the Lord, you know, 50, 60, 70 years into it. There was a lady who used to come here, Cynthia Cuccinata, who she wrote a book that told stories of her life, Vignettes from the Vine. And she became a missionary, I think, at the age of 60. And when I read that, I was like, what? Life doesn't stop at 60? I can become a missionary then? This is amazing. Because I'm going to be raising kids till I'm 60, probably. So, so just to see like their lives, just their passion, their hunger, their fire for the Lord, it just spoke volumes to us. And it was like, I want to be in this church because I see seniors who are here who are healthy and still in love and on fire for Jesus. And then another element where I see this kind of played out in New Hope is with our kids being a part of worship. Like, I heard so many of our new families that are coming where that's an element that they've fallen in love with. And even though as a parent, sometimes in the back, I'm like losing my mind, but I love that element where our kids can be a part of the worship experience that we have here. And we welcome them into that. And it's not a distraction. It's not an inconvenience, but it's a part of us worshiping together because we're setting that model for them. And then the other value that I'm going to talk about is legacy, where we honor generations that came before us and fight for generations that come after. And I was just thinking about legacy, and legacy is something that lasts. And I think legacy is something we have to be intentional about, because you can't just live your life however you want and then be like, whatever happens, happens. There's an intentionality to legacy where it's like, I want to live a life where people around me are going to catch hold of it and they're going to want to carry that. Like in the Old Testament, King Josiah, he had a desire to change the kingdom. You know, he had a desire to see his people come to the Lord. He made all these changes and all these things happen, but when he passed away, the legacy died. It didn't carry on. The people didn't carry the values, and they returned back to their sin. They put the idols back up, and then the next king had to take care of it, you know? But I want to see this church be a church that carries legacy, and it passes on to generation and generation. And so how I've seen us, you know, we honor the generations that came before us. We honor what they've done. We honor the work that they've sown here. And I was alluding to that a little with like the grieving, like when we aren't honoring the things that people have done in the church, we're not honoring how they've labored. And I feel like in this generation, there's a sense of where we're in danger of losing our ability to honor. Because information is so accessible, right? The internet, like we can have information at our fingertips to where we don't need to go to the person next to us. We don't need to go to someone older and wiser who has experience in an area. We can just go online and look it up that way. And I think one of the most honoring things that we can do for our brothers and sisters in the church is actually go to them and ask for their wisdom, you know, ask for their advice on things. Because there's our experiences in life when we have an opportunity to share that with someone and we have an opportunity to, it just redeems what we've gone through, right? When you've gone through something really hard and you've had a chance to like share that with someone, that just gives like so much more life to that experience.
And you find out that other people have been through that, survived, and then thrived again after that.
Yeah. And I know one of the ways that New Hope we currently honor the generations that have gone before is every year we dedicate a period of time to remembering our history. So we just went through a big season of that where we talked about belonging and how you can become a member. And then we had our 30th anniversary. And so we talked about our history and how this church was physically moved here. This building was physically moved here. And so there were people that had to lay a foundation physically so that this building could be here. And so just remembering that, honoring that, remembering the spiritual history and the prophecies about this congregation and what this church holds. And so I've never been in a church where I feel like they've been that intentional. And I feel like that's an intentional part of legacy. Like I was saying, legacy has to be intentional. And so when we remember we're intentional to lay the foundation for legacy and honor it, then it can carry on. And then another part of legacy is we fight for the generations that come after us. And so how we do that, we just get involved with them, build relationship. Just like, you go to the seniors who have experienced things with the Lord and you learn from them. We learn from our next generation. They say that young people who have at least one adult investing in their life are more likely to stay involved in the church when they get older. And then 46% of those who stay in the church said 5 or more adults at church invested time in them personally and spiritually. And so that's a responsibility on all of us, right? Like their parents, of course, though their parents are the chief disciplers in their lives, but we as a body have a responsibility to be discipling this next generation. And so it's our job to be that example of boldness, to be that example of faithfulness. Like I've gone to people in this church and I'm like, man, how have you been so faithful over the years? Like this older generation, you're setting an example for me, whether you realize it or not. And so that's the example I want to set for the ones coming after is like, I want to be faithful. I want to show you passion. I want to show you who Jesus is. And I don't know if you know it, but our kids right now, they're falling in love with prayer. Like our 3 to 5 year old Sally has been telling me about this lately, where she opens it up, lets them pray, and they just want to keep going. They just want to keep praying over and over. And if you little kids, they're the sweetest. And so she actually has to kind of put a stop to it, or else they can't get to the lesson time. But they're falling in love with prayer. And then even with our little guys at home, we occasionally have these times of worship with them, and sometimes it's hit or miss. They can be crazy, Levi, he's just an animal right now. He's 3 years old, and he's jumping off the couch. We have this little kitten that he just tackles her and wrestles her during worship. And then the other night, he's doing all those things, and all of a sudden he gets down on the floor and he's got this pose, and he's just moving his hand in this circle. And I was just but he kept and then he'd run off and do something. Then he'd come back and he'd do that again. But it was he was just so intentional about coming back to this moment. And I was just watching him, and I was just feeling the Lord in that moment, in the midst of his worship. He was ministering to me. And at the end of it, I was like, man, Levi, I felt the Lord all over that. And what's been going through my mind since that moment is what kind of warfare was happening in that moment because of the worship pouring out of this 3-year-old little boy. And so when we have an opportunity to pour into this next generation, to minister to their hearts, to set that example, guys, it's worth so much more than anything that you could ever ask for, is to see them rise up, to have a passion and a heart for prayer and worship. So I
gotta jump in there because
Yeah,
you got me going. Part of creating legacy is identifying what the next generation is carrying and amplifying that, and actually taking cues from the next generation. Yes, we have a discipleship role, but as I like to say, on earth, all discipleship is co-discipleship. None of us are Jesus. So we've got something to learn from each other, even from little children and teenagers and the whole spectrum. So identifying the work of God in somebody else. I just want to share this with you real quick. In Isaiah chapter 11, it gives all these amazing descriptions of Jesus' kingdom, the way he does life. And here's just one little snippet. In verse 6, it says, and a little child shall lead them. And so part of legacy is seeing they've got a hunger for prayer. Maybe we should follow them. They've got a freedom in worship. Maybe I should join them, and not give up on our role to also lead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. Patrick, do you have anything you want to add to that point, or? What do you think, Ryan?
I feel like, yeah,
Yeah.
we can
Yeah, so
we can do
let's-
this one fairly
Let's jump
quick.
over to Ryan. I know this is one that's passionate for you and for all of us, is everyone gets to play. Tell us a little bit about that and
Yeah.
why that's important and how we do that.
It really dovetails very well with what we're talking about. If we're honoring all generations, honoring every member, this idea that everybody has a part to play in the body. Let me just read to you from Ephesians chapter 4. Let me get the right spot. All right, from verse 15. Paul says, "But speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies." So stop there for just a second. The body of Christ, the church, is only held together by the joining of individual members. Like, if we're not actually relationally joined, there's no body. We can have a sign on the door that says church, but we're only church to the extent that we are interpersonally connected. Right. So, by that which every joint supplies, according to the proper working of each individual part, causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. So the connection of individual parts is key, but then also the proper working of each individual part is actually what causes the body to grow. I had the honor this morning, before coming over here, I stopped by the home of Denny and Kim Raup, and some of you may or may not know Denny. He's had a long fight with illness, and so he's not been with us in the room very much, but he's been with us online. And he was with us. He was able to be with us on Christmas Eve, and we had a beautiful Christmas Eve service. We did a hymn sing and had people shout out Christmas hymns they wanted to sing, so everybody contributing something in that way, and then also testimonies. And Denny got up and shared his testimony of, he wasn't supposed to see last Christmas. And here he was a year later doing another Christmas. And I was just reflecting on how he's sharing that part in that little service made it whole. And I was with him this morning, and he may be going home to Jesus soon. And I read this passage to him that I just shared with you and just let him know, like, you doing your part, being you and contributing what you have has helped make us whole. And I want to say the same thing to you. That's what makes the church whole, is you contributing your part. I have a weird and maybe sometimes frustrating view on volunteerism in the church. And I didn't run this by these guys, but people often ask me, like, what do you need help with? And I love that question. It's beautiful. It comes from a heart that wants to contribute and help. But it's really not about that. It's not about what I need help with or what the church needs help with. It's what piece do you have to give? I like to use this example. I was a worship pastor for a lot of years, and a woman came to me and she's like, I want to be on the worship team. I play flute. I didn't need a flute player. There was never a moment where I'm like, you know what I need? But Debbie played flute. That's what she had to give. And so we found a way for her to give her piece. So that's just one example of everyone gets to play. I think I need to address this though. Like, does that mean I get to be on worship team and play my jaw harp, my kazoo? Maybe not. It does. Everyone gets to play doesn't mean everyone gets to play whatever part. And it's a process of together discerning how we fit together. And earlier in the chapter, Paul talks about how God has given the church leaders, pastors, teachers, apostles, evangelists, prophets, to help fit the church together and equip us for the work of the ministry. And so that's part of our role that can be really challenging and weighty, is helping people find their place. And it doesn't always happen right away, right? It can take time. Over years of knowing each other, like, you know what? I see this in you. And being willing to try different things. I could talk about this all day, but that's a good.
I just want to add one bit there. Everyone gets to play is a John Wimberism. If you don't know who John Wimber is, look it up, Google it.
That was good.
I'm trying to be concise. Everyone gets to play was paired with his phrase of doing the stuff. Because the story is he went to church. He was, I can't remember if he was the manager or played with the Righteous Brothers, and then got saved, went to church, and after 2 weeks asked someone, like, when do we do the stuff? He meant like when do we cast out the demons and heal this? Like, when do we get to do the stuff? And the person's response, I mean, he'd ham it up, but he'd say stuff like, oh, we don't do the stuff. We just talk about doing the stuff. I don't know if that was word for word, but probably not. But the point is, everyone gets to play in doing the stuff. It has an implication that following Jesus means you do it. It's not just about what we think and necessarily say, it's what we do. So this idea of everyone gets to play it's a mindset. Yeah. Like, when you're gathering, when you're going, are you assuming that you're doing the stuff? It's not Ryan. Ryan's on the stage, evidently doing the stuff in front of you, but that sage on the stage mentality is not in the Bible.
Come on.
It is, we all do the stuff.
Yeah.
Everything Ryan said about how we congregate on Sundays is true, right? We got to fit the pieces together, right? But your mindset is, when we get together, we're all here to do the stuff. Okay? Yeah.
Come on.
There you go, Denny.
Denny said, we all get to hand out the loaves and the fishes. I love that picture because sometimes it feels like what we have is not enough. And 5 loaves was not enough to feed 5,000 people, but giving that to Jesus, giving your little to Jesus is enough. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. That's good. Krista, do you have anything to add on that one?
I do. Yeah, and I do want to say, if you've ever over the years felt like there wasn't a spot for you or there was limited seating, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I think there are times where leaders can fail in that department, if they want things to look or be a certain way. But I do want to say, for this team, our heart is for everyone gets to play, and I've seen such a team mentality since Ryan has come on board, is like, we're building teams right and left, and there is so much strength in team because what I don't have, the person next to me probably has. And I've just seen so many of our ministries in the church just rise up, like our trustees have just roared to the forefront, I feel like, in these past 2 years of just really killing it, because they're a team, and as a team, they can get the job done. As one person, I can get a little bit done, but not all of it. I need the person on my right or my left. Like, we needed Patrick to do this whole culture and values series. Mm-hmm. He put it together, and it's like you can see his passion for it and his communication with us and how we're doing it. And so seeing those strengths in one another and calling them out and being like, I don't have to be strong in the things Patrick's strong in. I don't want to do that. I'll be strong in what I can be strong in. And so just seeing that and recognizing it and being okay, like, yeah, let's call those strengths out in each other.
Right on.
Go ahead.
I just want to put us on the line and say to the congregation, like, any one of us, we will meet and talk with you and walk with you in finding your place. If you're like, this is what I have to give, but we don't have a crochet ministry. Like, we will walk with you and discern how that fits into the picture.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening to this. The number is on the screen. If you have any questions you want to throw at us, we will try to do a similar thing this coming week and answer a couple of those. Obviously, we can't get to them all. Any last comments before we close out here today?
Tammy does have a crochet ministry, just so you know.
Oh, snap. We're going to have a Matthew 18 conversation.
And hey, since you mentioned Tammy, consider this a light initial announcement. Tammy and the Banfield family is going to be moving to Ohio, and Tammy and the kids are the forerunners going first at the end of the month. So we'll shine a light on that more and pray for you guys. But I wanted to let you know so you can start saying some goodbyes. They'll be back and stuff and all that, but showing them some love, okay?
We love you guys.
Yeah.
Nate and Vivian, if you guys could just lead us in a little bit of worship. I'm going to invite all of you. We're going to just clean this stuff up, but we're just going to take a couple minutes this morning, and if you could, whatever posture is easiest for you to focus and not be distracted, whether it's standing, sitting, kneeling, let's just take some time and see if there's anything that stuck out to us today that the Lord is kind of poking at our hearts, whether it's something that we are not doing, that we need to start doing, whether it's a person that we need to talk to, whether it's a skill that we need to hone in on and try to just work on so that we can be a better body together. I just ask you to take a few minutes and kind of go into listening mode with the Lord. Maybe just ask the simple question, Lord, what is it that you want to show me this morning? What is it that you want to highlight? And let's just listen for a couple minutes. Nate and Vivian, you can lead us in whatever worship you'd like to, but let's just soak in that for a couple minutes and see what the Lord has to say.
We've come to join the song long before our lives, to raise our voice along heaven and earth alike. We've seen your faithful hand, your mercy without end, the King who bled and died, a God who sacrificed, be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all, and unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all. Be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all, and unto you, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all.
So we take one more minute. Let's switch our intention. If the Lord's highlighting something to you, let's just ask the question, Lord, this is the thing you're highlighting. What can I do about it? What is my action step? Because we've talked on and off these last couple weeks about not being just hearers of the word, but being doers of the word. Let's just ask the Holy Spirit, what can we do to take that first step towards becoming a healthier piece of the body, or lifting someone else up, or starting to work on something. Let's just take one more minute and see if the Lord speaks.
The Lord gave me a song before service started, but I just want to offer it to you as something to sing over yourself. I grew up thinking that I was like weird and different and that I didn't really fit in. And I look out at all of you and I know I belong here with you. And I see your faces and I know they're faces I'm going to see for all eternity, and it just makes me so happy. So I just want to sing this, and I ask you to join in and sing it over yourself as well. There's a spot at the table, and it's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of a family. There's a space at the table, it's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table, it's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table that's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table that's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table that's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table that's ready for me. I'm invited and I'm wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table that's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family. There's a space at the table that's ready for me. I'm invited and wanted, part of the family, part of the family. I'm part of the family. We're part of the family. Oh, I'm part of the family. I'm part of the family. And you're part of the family. Oh.
Yes, Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for making us a part of your family. We just ask that you would give each and every one of us the whatever it is that's missing, whether it's the confidence, the skills, the community, to be able to include more people in that family. We know that you want your family to grow. And I just wanted to say, Vivian, something that came to mind when you said, what did you say? You felt like you're weird and different and you didn't fit in? Well, sometimes I think the enemy only needs to twist a little bit of that. Like it's just a small lie, like you are weird and you are different and you fit in. So like, don't feel like you can't be weird or different, because we're all weird and different, but you still fit in, you still belong. So there is a seat at the table for you downstairs for coffee hour. Maybe not a seat at the table, but at least standing room for sure. So bless you as we go. I'd love to see you downstairs. One other thing I wanted to say is there is a seat at the table for you, but there might be 1 or 10 people in this room that need to step up to the table. So it's everyone's responsibility. It's our responsibility to invite people to the table, but sometimes you're standing a couple steps off from the table, and step towards the table. Take that seat that's there for you. All right, that's all I've got. Bless you. Have a great day. Have a great week. Love you all.
All of me. Oh, I give you my all. Yeah, I'm not running anymore. Oh, I give you my all. I'm giving you all of me, Father. I need you to search my heart. Coming on back to surrender. Show me where to start. Yeah. All I want is to be abiding. 'Cause you show me a different view. What I had was less exciting. 'Cause dreams don't love me like you do. I give you my all. Hey, I give you my all. I'm not running anymore. No, 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 no. I give you my all. I'm giving you all of me, all of me. Oh, I give you my all. And I'm not running anymore. No, 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 no. I give you my all. I'm giving you all of me, all of me. Pause. Why would I make plans? Push away your hand. Alone I can't stand. Stop. Your plan is my choice. Tune out all the noise. I can hear your voice. And I don't wanna run. No. I don't want control. I don't wanna run. I don't want control. No, no. I give you my all. I give you my all. Yeah, I'm not running anymore. No, I give you my all. I'm giving you all of me, all of me. I give you my all. I'm not running anymore. No, 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 no. I give you my all. Giving you all of me, all of me. Heavenly Father, I come, don't have much to offer. Holy One, I'm humbled by all